Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass to the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
And I'm Adam.
Let's get into it. Good morning, Adam. How are you?
I am well. And how are you doing, Talia?
Also well. I have a minor concussion because I was in a car accident on Tuesday, so I'm a little froggy. Yeah, this kid rear-ended me. I can cut that out, but this kid rear-ended me. And he was like shaking. I'm like, is this your first accident? He's like, no. And I looked at his car and I was like, this adds up. Like,
yeah, no, you're telling the truth.
Yeah. So at least you're telling the truth. I feel like I have just some like weight on my brain, So maybe we can talk about what that would be like this fine week that we're meeting.
Oh my gosh. Oh. And like, I feel like just to like give context to everyone else, it's like listening, like the last 2 weeks of us trying to meet has been hellish.
Yes.
Like, and like stuff I didn't even tell you about is I literally had the internet guy here up till 30 minutes ago getting the internet running. Cause I was like, I am not calling Talia and telling her that I can't do this again. She'll just block me.
We're done.
I'm between a rock and a hard place is what I'm between right now. And like, it was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And so anyways, we're up, we're running, we're great. We're good in that well. But man, I mean, just the pressures of life right now.
I know.
It feels like when the seasons change, also there's a change in life. Like just listening to clients, they're all sort of like starting to put on those suits of armor. They're getting ready for it. They're like, oh, the holidays are coming. My mom's already doing the, obligatory texts on like, are you coming home? Like, there's a lot going on in this space.
Oh, yeah.
For people. And then, I mean, we're also like on the verge of a nuclear war. But other than that, nothing.
Low-key, a typical Thursday, if you will.
Small potatoes.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's NBD, as the kids say. Everybody's like, no, this is a very big deal. We're like, well, yeah, I think talking about that, because I was telling you before we started recording, a lot of what I've been helping my clients through, and just even feeling myself, is this new sociological phenomena, not that the actual thing itself is new, but a label for it called the mental load, and how a lot of women are typically, they are feeling as though they are burdened with this mental load and having to manage the household and the chaos. And then I got to do this, and this, and planning. My view is that part of it is primal, instinctual, what is also fostered when we grow up and what we're modeled and what we see. So those things happening.
Yes.
And if we don't question that or ask for help or task our partner with all that we're doing to even see if they notice it, it furthers the mental load. And I know that there are relationships where they've had this out loud and the guy's like, yeah, I expect all those things from you. That's not what I'm referencing. I'm talking about the kind where it's like we've inadvertently almost brought it on or continue to bring it on ourselves by assuming that's what our partner assumes of us without even verifying the assumption.
Yeah, I mean, if you're with a guy who's just emotionally stupid, that's a whole different situation than really not having clarity in the discussion.
Yeah.
Because what I find, yes, I will say that to a certain extent, men probably are willfully ignorant to a certain extent, right? Like, there is this like leave it to beaver approach to life of like, oh, she's going to cook, she's going to clean, she's going to take care of the kids. And then all that's required of me is just to work and bring home money. Now, I know that we're being very stereotypical here, but let's also, just devil's advocate, let me ask the women out there who want to have a more present husband, will you actually let him be more present?
Yes.
Because like when I'm working with couples, we have like this disclosure session. In the disclosure session, I try to make sure it doesn't turn into like, let's put on gloves and just beat the crap out of each other. But I really say like, I want you guys to come into session with like your performance reviews for your spouse.
Yes.
And sometimes people are like stoked on this.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can make it as professional or as like just a sheet of paper, whatever you want. And what I'll have a lot of times is maybe that wife will come in and she'll say, hey, these are all things that you're not doing.
Mhm.
And the husband will take a step back and be like, oh man, I actually see that, yes, I did sidestep my responsibility as like being a husband, taking care of the kids, asking you what your needs are.
Right.
And then we start to hear about the attempts. So the next week they come in, she's
Yes.
like, he has been driving me fucking crazy.
Yep.
It's like, oh, what is he doing? She's like, he won't stop asking me questions.
Keeps asking me what I need and asking me if he can help, and then doing these things, and I was going to do it, and then he went and did it. And I'm like, isn't this what you wanted? And then they have to sit back and be like, oh,
yeah,
oh, okay, I see it now.
I get it, but he's still wrong.
But how can he do the things and I'm still right?
I mean, and again, I'm not here to vilify any side, but what I love to talk about is there's another thing that comes in that a lot of times I hear women say in a couple situation, I don't want you to ask questions, I just want you to do it.
Okay. Let's dive into that. I don't want you to have to ask. I just want you to know that I want this thing done. Where do you think that comes from? Because I have my own answer from psychoanalysis, but where do you think this comes from?
Well, so first off, it's already in a bad spot because it comes from a place of resentment. And so you're also now stuck in guessing or assuming what your spouse needs, which is setting both of you up for failure.
But you should just know.
You should just know.
Know why?
I mean,
because I would just know.
exactly. Because I have a routine. I
And why are
know
you not a clone of me? Why doesn't the world think the way I do? It would be so much easier if you would just get in my head and read my mind, so I don't even have to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This actually works. I had a client a couple weeks ago that his wife got sick. His wife needed to quarantine away. He needed to take care of 3 kiddos, right?
Wow.
And he stepped up. He stepped up, but he came to session in tears. He's like, I can't do anything right, right? This is a very successful person, makes 6 figures, provides for his family. But he's like, I can't do anything. She's got to be in quarantine for a little bit longer. The kids have to be over here. The kids can't go to school, and I don't know what to do. And it came down to, as he was asking questions, she was getting more frustrated because she's like, don't you know that you need to be in pickup line by 2:30? Don't you know that you need to be dropping them off at 7:45? And so like, he was getting the kids to school, he was picking the kids up, but it wasn't done to her timeline.
There we go.
And he's like, man, like I cooked, like, again, this is a dude that he's really out of his element. So like, even him doing Stouffer's like lasagna, right? Like, the kids are fed, right? That's what we want. But there wasn't any greens. You didn't like put a salad out. There's no, like, there's all sorts of he's like, no matter what I do,
it wasn't right.
He's telling me I'm not doing it right. And it led to a really good conversation, because I feel like this is another part of it, is if I could bring in a voice for men to this discussion, there is this voice of like, well, you guys have only wanted us to bring the money.
Yeah, for many years even if there was a hope, there wasn't, to my knowledge, an out loud expectation or societal standard that there is now: be emotionally available and financially stable. For many years, it was really only highlighted again societally, out loud, verbally, be the provider. I don't need you to do all that other stuff.
And I would even argue that there were men who were very much emotionally present, and maybe in that being emotionally present, they weren't the best financial providers, but then they were told they were not men.
Yes.
And so there's been a conditioning process where men, we can't come home and bitch. If we come home and say like, hey, it was a really hard day and I'm stressed out with my boss and I don't want, all of a sudden we're bitching. We're not being a man. Like, I don't need you think like my life is easy. I've had X, Y, and Z. The kids have been crazy. I got to get to this, that, and the other. Like, and very quickly we're dismissed and we're told, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like a learned helplessness position, because as we stay in our lane, we go, well, all right, I can see you're struggling, but I ain't going to ask, because if I ask, it's somehow going to be my fault again. And so I'm just going to be that man in the man cave, or the dude that comes home, cracks a beer, sits down on the Burka lounger. And I'm not co-signing this behavior, but I can say I can understand why a person would get to the spot of like, you just tell me what you want me to do. And that's why I feel like there's so many husbands and men out there in relationships that they become the subservient companion, and then it drives their wives nuts.
Yeah.
Because the wives don't want to be the man in the relationship. They don't want to be the leader in that regards.
I can attest to that.
Like,
I want to do that role or embody that role when it feels authentic and congruent,
yes.
which for me is typically in like a career mode or at certain parts of relating romantically. But it's not entirely that's what I want to be.
Yes.
The role is like husband is this and wife is this, and that's not the case. And to your point about it over time just becomes quieter and more subservient, the feeling that men have or the opinion that they have of, well, this is just how I'll be. If we're also blocking you, if we're requesting this of you but blocking you, or each time you do it we say that it's not the way that we would have done it, or it's not the right way according to, silently or out loud, our standard, even if I were the recipient of that, I would eventually lose motivation to do that thing, because there's no reward in that. And eventually, if all I'm doing the thing for is to avoid the punishment of you being mad at me, you're not going to feel motivated at all to want to do the thing. So inadvertently, we are contributing to this problem by having this standard. And I've talked to many women, I've seen this in couples too. We want to know your inner world. We want to know if you've had a rough day. We would love it if you would open up. Granted, there are limitations and boundaries.
Yeah.
There would be if your wife stereotypically came home crying every day for 45 minutes. Like, that's a turn off in both directions. That's transgender. That's just more like, this is a big emotion. Like, you gotta work on regulating yourself. We want you to open up, but there's often times where we don't make it a safe place, to your point, for you to open up to. Well, quit crying, quit complaining, quit whatever else. And it's like, why are we reinforcing this norm if what we really want is for you to be emotionally available, yet every time you are, we shut you down? What kind of mixed messaging is that?
Well, and then what type of actual role modeling is being instilled into your kid that's coming up? Like, and so just so everyone doesn't believe that I'm some misogynist asshole,
I've been
take a step back.
One too. So
let me just say, this is what I believe, that there's absolutely enough space for divine feminine and for masculinity. I believe, as men, and how I work with men as a coach and a therapist, is I believe that men need to provide masculinity in the way of making women feel safe, secure, and able to bring themselves fully to the discussion. I am in no way signing on to toxic masculinity or any of the other keywords you want to throw at me. But the idea that a relationship will survive without masculinity in it is where I go, it just doesn't work. Because what ends up is, when the masculine side doesn't show up, the feminine side doesn't feel safe and secure. And then all of a sudden she is pushed into becoming more masculine. How does that come out? It's going to look in the resentment. It's going to look in the cold-heartedness. And it's going to look in this stereotypical realm, exactly where you have this young child, this young boy that's growing up going, well, wait a second. My mom hates my dad. Relationships look a lot like you're supposed to bring home money, shut up, make sure we're happy. And all of a sudden we have this whole different realm of like, what does a relationship look like? And there's a great, if you want to start like pulling out studies on this, look into Norway. So Norway has an issue where their men are not dating. They have a huge issue where they cannot get their population to actually reproduce, because more men are finding out that they're having their needs met, and I don't agree with this, having their needs met through video games and pornography. The problem is suicide is going through the roof. Depression is going through the roof. Anxiety is going through the roof. but it's a large enough problem that the government of Norway is doing studies on why aren't men wanting to have relationships. And the number one thing that's coming back in these studies is a feeling of hopelessness or dread when trying to connect to the opposite sex. And so if you want to just have a snapshot, Europe's much older than America, but we're kind of on that same track.
Yeah.
And that's why when I sit down and I talk to people, like I just had a dating coaching session where I was talking to a woman who's like, it's a bloodbath out there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like I can't hop on any dating service without getting an unsolicited dick pic as the first form of communication. And I'm now maybe thinking that celibacy and cats are the only way I'm going to move forward in this life.
My closing outlook, Mike.
like, you know, you're right. They at least don't know how to text yet. So like cats are fine. So, but you sit back and you go, no, how did we get here? How do we remove ourselves and make it so transactional?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, what we're talking about here, like how sexy is it also? It's not.
No, it's not. And I don't think it's sexy for us to bring that feeling of dread or hopelessness full circle to that, the mental load feeling. Neither partner wants to have the experience, whether it's thought or feeling based, that it's all on them. When you're in a partnership, neither person wants to have to always take the role or always take the lead in one area or the other. And I don't think either sex has the corner on homemaking this or that. These are learned skills. These are things that you do by associative learning that you see and you are operantly or classically conditioned into doing. And if you are the woman who is having the mental load, it's important to understand that biologically, and I'm not blaming and saying it just has to stay this way, we relate to the world differently. We are able to have more diffuse awareness. We see things that, with testosterone being what you lead with, typically higher, moderate to high testosterone men, you are more single focused. So you don't see all the things that we see of like, I got to pick this up, I got to this, I got to that. You're on track to do this one thing. The socks, the underwear, the clothes fall off, you go do the thing. We see the aftermath of it. And it doesn't mean you can't encourage your partner or share. There are times where I understand when you get home, this is what your process is. I would like you to know the outcome and the aftermath of it so we can work together as a team. That if you want to do all of that, fine. But by the next day at that time, it needs to be picked up. Like, you're allowed to negotiate this, but so many women have this conditioning where they fall silent or they're under the assumption it cannot change. And then they fear, which we've talked about a lot in couples therapy, that they just fear they're going to repeat their parents' marriage, which inadvertently they will if they don't take any action to stop that from happening and stop that cycle from being perpetuated, that I carry the mental load. It's my responsibility all the time. I'm the only one who goes to Target. I'm the only one who sees the toilet papers out. This. If I'm so busy replacing all those things that you never have the opportunity or the gap to notice it, my gap of noticing might be much different than yours. I could, within 30 minutes, know the toilet paper. It could take you 4 days. This is also where this feedback loop happens. This happens with teens and parents. You've known this too. They look, they're like, why didn't you do this? I didn't see it. What? How could you not have? Because I wasn't looking for it.
So we jump into shame and embarrassment, right? And guilt.
Yeah. If I'm looking for those things, I'm going to find it. If I'm actively looking for ways I view my partner as failing me or things that need to be fixed around the house, I know. And also women are much more likely to vocalize, oh, look at what I did, because we like praise, validation. Every human being does. It's a good feeling. But we want something back for what we sacrificed, especially when the other person didn't ask for it. So we'll sit down and be like, and just so you know, I cleaned the range and the this and this, this, and this. And the guy's like, okay, thanks. And this goes both ways, because women are also like, okay, thank you. But if you genuinely say, whoa, thank you, I really appreciate that. That is a positive feedback loop rather than it being a sarcastic, like, what do you want, a trophy?
It's so funny just to hear you sort of, you're outlining this and framing it up. And it's true, because we create our own cognitive dissonance in like, okay, so most men are required to cut the grass and take care of the outside of the house. There's this assumption that like anything past the garage is all the woman's responsibility. And then again, we can't have affirmation or awareness or appreciation for what we are doing. Like,
Yes.
why don't we want to say thank you?
What does it
Why
cost?
is what it costs absolutely nothing, and it costs everything if you don't do it.
Yes, and it's I think in a relationship where you are building a life with somebody and you have kids and you're setting an example, being not to a patronizing level overly
Mhm.
appreciative, being appreciative of what you want ensures that you will get more of it, and it ensures a
Mhm.
happier homeostasis for the family system, even if the family is only the two of you and your partner. But because we're operating typically on such a primal level where I shouldn't have to say thank you, that does get ingrained from childhood. When your parents ask you to do the dishes or the laundry or anything else and you do
Yep.
it and they don't reinforce or reward you with a thank you, you're just that's your expectation for being able to live there is you do all of
Mm.
these things. This pattern of not feeling appreciated and the mental load typically falling on women, I believe, and from what I've researched, starts in childhood and is modeled to us when one parent or spouse is expected to do the thing, the other ensures that it happens. This feedback loop gets created, and then the
Mhm.
child's looking at it like, okay, well, these things are my responsibility, but I'm not going to expect a thank you for it. I'm just going to do it. And then in dating and romance, but I want an appreciation. Like, well, I'm doing all these things for you. I'm doing all these wifely or girlfriendly things for you, my partner. And if we're not
Yep.
together at any level yet, why don't you see that I'm good enough to be your wife or your girlfriend? I'm doing all these
Mhm.
things where the recipient of that is like, sweet, I don't even have to make you my girlfriend to get access to all this. Nice. And this goes both ways. If you're taking us on dates and doing all these things and we don't have to make you our boyfriend or whatever for that to happen, why would we? You
Yep.
often don't realize that what you're doing for the other person without them having to ask, you are silently trying to model for them what you wish they would do for you, but they're in taking it as cool. This person's doing this thing for me because they want to do it. They're not
Yeah.
seeing it the way that you're seeing it, and they're not reading between the subtext because why would they? They're not mind readers.
Well, and you're building codependency at the same time.
For
Like,
sure. Come on. Doesn't everybody want a healthy codependent relationship?
because I mean, yes, if you're going to that level and extent of trying to role model this to that person without actually verbalizing it,
Yeah.
um, again, that person is never going to meet your expectations,
Right.
and then you're going to continue to feel over leveraged.
Yep.
I mean, it's funny because as you're talking, I'm like, oh God, she's saying the quiet stuff out loud. Like, because there's a lot of people that are like,
I know.
oh shit, Talia just went there.
I
Like,
did.
like
I did.
there's a lot of guys that are unhearting this off of the podcast stuff so that their girlfriends or wives won't listen to it. Like, no, those people are trash. Don't listen to them.
Yeah.
They're
It's
just
awful.
terrible.
Don't. They're bad.
Oh my
They're bad.
God.
No, it's true.
Yeah. But
That's reinforced and not wanting to hear what you already know is true about yourself.
mhm.
Tough love, you need to hear it. I'm not saying that it's going to be comfortable for you to hear as a person listening to this going, oh shit, she called me out. That is ingrained in all of us and does, for the benefit of society and our own selves, need to start being reworked and replaced. You may be bringing the mental load on yourself by assuming you have to do it or being unable to tolerate when it's not getting done. And this is
Yep.
directly parent child. They leave their dishes in the sink and parents are like, oh, I can't stand dishes in the sink. And they keep going in and rescuing the child and reinforcing avoidance maintained behavior. If you look at the four
Yeah.
functions of behavior, and the child goes, okay, so all I have to do really is push it to 3 days and I know it'll get done. They're inadvertently creating a reward cycle. And then the parent still gets mad at the teenager. And the
Yep.
teenager's like, why? Why would I do it? You're doing it for me.
And the teenager further goes, okay, so I'll just isolate. I'll
Yeah.
just isolate. I'll just make sure I'll drop them off when mom goes to bed, and then I'll disappear. And it's like she'll blow up a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And then yes, we take that right into all the other relationships we have.
Yep.
And I mean, I think that's why a lot of times when I sit down, when I was doing a lot of work with adolescents,
Mm-hmm.
I would start off with parents would be pretty hesitant with me, but I'd say, okay, well, before I sit down with your adolescent, I want to sit down with you guys.
Yeah.
we're going to do a 90-minute session. I'd just love to hear about your relational dynamics, your house dynamics. Let's talk about that. And the more that we would talk about it, I would get more parents that would be frustrated when I would say, no, I definitely need to work with your adolescent. And there's things that I can target there, but there's things that you're going to undermine my work in with how you're behaving and talking to each other. And they're like, no, we are not the problem. They are the problem.
That's my favorite.
And the
Like,
best,
it's your fault though. So
you have no idea. So I said this once, and I had a supervisor that like bit my head off about it, but I was like, it's like Caesar Milan, it's not the dog. And I probably shouldn't have said that about a child, but it's like it's the truth. It's not the kid. Your kids I truly believe
show them to do, and then you get mad at them because it's really you getting mad at the part of yourself that you don't like, that you're seeing expressed out loud in the other.
Yeah, I've never been to a baby nursery and found one that was gambling, smoking, and cheating. Like, it just doesn't happen. But what does like this is learned behaviors. Yeah. And then there's so much triangulation that happens in this as well, because then all of a sudden this child becomes a political pawn in the relationship, whether I'm with mom more or dad's bad talking mom or whatever it is. And once we're into that, where all of a sudden we're trying to get our children to co-sign why our spouse is wrong, we're already headed in a very, very bad position. Yeah. Because at that point, we're just sort of allying up for the war. And if all we can think about is conflict, we are not going to be looking for resolutions.
Not at all. That's not.
We're not looking on how to come together. We're looking at how we divide assets. Mm-hmm. And I know that, like, in a short period of time, we made a big jump in the conversation that we've been having. But this is why there is a need right off the bat that you need to be able to articulate to your spouse or your significant other what you want from them.
Yes.
If you don't do that, we can't sit back and then be mad at our significant other for not turning towards us, for not helping us. Because at the same time, if you're putting off the signals that you're all good, you're fine, you don't need me, you don't need my help, I'm not going to, like you were saying, Talia, just be like, oh, well, I need to make sure that my help is available to this person.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you get couples to sit down and they start talking and you realize that it's actually not these big overarching reasons that are pushing people away. It's teeny little things. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you never ask about book club. Oh, I took care of the kids so you could go to book club, and I thought that's what you wanted from me. But you've never asked, and I'm always reading books. You've never asked me what I like.
I want you to ask me about book club. I want you to want to do the dishes. No one, in my view, yes, it releases oxytocin because it's rhythmic motion. No one really wants to do the dishes. I don't look at a sink of dishes and go, that's my kink. I don't. There's times where I will use cleaning as a stress relief, but that's also not something that I'm like intentionally piling up dishes in the sink so I could have something to use to relieve myself.
Yeah.
I'd rather just a fairy come in and do everything for me. And this is, to your point, coming up with being really clear what you want from your partner. Even if you're listening to this and you've been married a very long time, you need to sit down and have a conversation with your partner and tell them, hey, I've been doing these things because I'd rather they get done than not. And I maybe not inadvertently created a pattern where you don't have to do the things, or I've blocked you from doing it because every time you've tried to, I step in and tell you to do it my way. And I'm done with that. I need your help. I'm going to be vulnerable. These are the things that I see that on my day-to-day basis, here's what I do. And just, you're not shitting on your partner and saying this, you're sharing, I wake up early, I get the kids ready, I do this, I do that. I make sure that literally walk them through your day, and both of you can hear out loud. You have no clue how much you might be on the same exact page as your partner with other things they are doing too that you don't even know, that you don't brag or tell or need or try and cajole your partner into giving you validation for, because they just do it. You don't see me telling you every morning that I'm doing this, and that, watering the plants, sweeping this, whatever, because it just get done and I need to do it and get on with my day. I'm not doing it as a way to try and get accolades from you. I'm doing it because these are things that are necessary to contribute to the household. And if your partner doesn't know all that you do and start to feel resentful because you keep doing with the expectation of appreciation and you're not getting it, you also need to ask for appreciation. You can't demand it. You can request it, and your partner has the right to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a different conversation.
And I think it comes back to also recognizing, like, I loved how you were talking about identifying things that we do that we don't even realize that our spouses or significant other is trying to do. I was just reminded of a couple I worked with years ago. They're like, why is the dog so freaking fat? And they realized that the dog was getting 4 meals a day because the husband would get up, feed him. Then the wife would feed him. Then the husband would come home and feed him. And then the wife would feed him. And we were in a conversation, and it was a very heated conversation. And the wife basically came out swinging and said, I don't feel like you care about me. You don't give a shit about us and the kids. You don't do, and like, I mean, just let him have it. And I will allow that to happen because I think it's powerful. We need to get some of that poison out so we know where they're at. Mm-hmm. And I'll just never forget, I asked him to pause. I said, okay, what you said was really heavy there. Let's take a second. Let's take a deep breath. And then I'd really like to hear your response. And he said, what do you mean I don't care about you? When was the last time you had to fill up your car? And she like sat there perplexed. And what ended up finding out was that he would fill up the car 2 times a week while she was doing her yoga, because he knew, like, oh, that way you don't have to do it with the kids. Now, I get it that in the grand scheme of things might be that not that large of a thing, but you couldn't say that he was an attempt.
No, that's protecting and providing for, even without having to be asked to do so. And this is where the shift needs to happen. There are many things your partner is doing on your behalf without you ever having to ask, but it might not be the things that you want them to be doing without you having to ask. So you might have to learn to ask for the things you wish you didn't have to ask for, and start seeing and appreciating the things you never have to ask for that are getting done. We get so laser focused on everything being the way that I want. And some couples don't transcend out of that more infant-like freezing of the mind, where unconditional love and regard, and they would just know and read my mind, much like this mother-infant telepathy of, I hear this cry, it means this, I hear this, it means this. That is not the case in our adult relationships. Get to a place of feeling very known and seen by using our big person adult words that we learn in therapy. Brave thing, and applying them and being okay with being vulnerable and sharing. I am frustrated when I see this. Some families have a basket for upstairs and downstairs. I don't know if you had that. I know one of my friends did growing up, and whenever the person would walk by, if there was something in the basket, it was just a family thing to bring it upstairs, put it away, etc. And it made fighting about this pile that would pile up at the bottom or the top of the stairs much less. But so many people, if I'm like, oh, I'm running late for class, I got to get up and get my backpack, and I just start over the pile and run to get it and leave, it would make sense that a parent would be like, did you not see this? And the answer is genuinely no, because I wasn't looking for it.
It's not a part of my system.
It's not a part of my system. I have to be looking for the thing that you want me to see in order to see it. And if you keep doing these things and rescuing me from seeing it because you can't tolerate the thing not being done, I won't know to do it. I won't know how frustrated you are that the dishes aren't done by me on Wednesday nights, let's say, because every Thursday morning when I wake up, they're done. Why would I ever assume you're doing that to send me a message? Like, what? Men don't think like that. And a lot of women who I've worked with who tamp down that overextended, like the Enneagram 2, like that helper giver energy, they start to look and go, wow, I'm really burned out from being a people pleaser and overextending and doing everything for everybody else except myself. And they setting boundaries. And I'm like, yes, you can do that. Who said it was your responsibility to do all of these things and only carry the mental load? If your partner sat you down day one and said, I expect you to cook, to clean, to do all these things, and you said yes, then you have to have a renegotiation of your deal. But so many couples have that silent agreement and they fall into these behavioral patterns. And unless it starts to irritate or cause resentment, you're not going to change it. And if one person especially is benefiting from the other person taking care of the mental load, I really am not going to think to change it.
I call that position fat, dumb, and happy. Like if I'm fat, dumb, and happy, I'm not looking. I'm not like, oh, you wanted me to do that? I thought we had a good agreement. I feel like I'm over leveraged. I feel like you're taking advantage of me. Well, all of a sudden you're coming to me with like, well, how long have you been feeling this way? 12 years. Oh, okay. And so then there's also, so here, I'm not saying that you have to let him be an asshole.
No, that's
Okay, that's not it.
what I want to send. We can fix both of these mind states to get to a compromise.
But it also, what's necessary to bring into this is grace.
1000%. Yes.
If we don't bring in grace, again, we're setting the whole intervention up for failure. Because like when we do have those awarenesses pop out in session, and you have a husband that's like, oh wow, I didn't realize that you felt that way. I'm going to try to be more attentive. And then we come sit down and she's like, well, he only did it for one day this last week.
That's
and it's like
more than it was. So let's appreciate it.
And it's like, okay. And so again, be like, oh, okay. And so, and he'll many times I'll have it where the spouse will be like, yeah, I got back into a routine. Things got crazy, but I'm trying my best. And everyone's like, well, he just did it once. He doesn't really care. And it's like, oh, like, again, you're now holding the door shut. You cracked it open, told us what was in there, that you needed help. It's like, hey, this room's on fire.
Yeah.
Come save me and let me shut the door. Like it doesn't.
If you were to fight through the door, then that lets me know you love me because we are feelings based and you are opinion based.
Or you're too abusive because I'd like the door shut right now, please. Well, you're telling me you're on fire. So I'm trying to come through the door.
That's the other thing is when we are in that focused mode and we receive a mixed message about something, like I taught my students this morning, if somebody was like, I'm fine, and sing-songy and was like, no, really, I'm good. Like we're all set. I would believe them versus like, I'm fine.
Yeah. If Eeyore tells you he's okay, and then you have,
it. If there's too much incongruency, it motivates humans to do nothing because it's a waste of our resources. If I don't feel like I can win at figuring that out, I'm not going to make an attempt in a direction to try and read between the lines of my spouse's mood. And I'm going to say, I'm going to follow either what you're going to tell me or what you're showing me and what I'm reading. I'm not translating both. I'm not going to read between the lines every single time. If I notice a pattern of incongruency, I am going to bring it up. Every night when I've gotten home and I've asked if you want help with this, you say no, and then you come upstairs frustrated 2 hours later and accuse me of not helping you. What gives? Being able to notice within yourself or on behalf of your partner where there is, I call it being lopsided, rather than it being like unfair. Not many things in life are fair. It can feel lopsided though. What responsibility do you have and what are you taking in? I'm making it lopsided. I'm weighing down my side of the seesaw so much because I can't tolerate the in between of I ask you to do something. And you also might not do it on my timing. And then I feel frustrated that I have to get everything done all the time by the end of every day, where you can just wait and do it the next day. And then you really have to ask yourself, what is the most important thing? That it gets done, when it gets done, how it gets done. When you task your partner or ask it and they agree to it, okay, I will do the dishes and you would do it every morning at 11 a.m. and they do it 2 times a week at 3 p.m. It's still getting done. You can't put that many parameters on the request. It's the request of please get this done. And then you walk away. And if you give them a window, could we at least agree to do this once a week? There are people who procrastinate and will do it Sunday at 11:59. Technically, it's still done by Monday morning. And the partner who's like, but I wish it were different. I'm like, but you should have asked. You only get so many negotiation bits when it comes to that before it feels like you're controlling your partner into basically being a mini you. And that's
it's straight up micromanagement, right? Yes. Like even if we go into like business psychology, it doesn't work.
They don't. You don't think the way that I think.
No. And then I think there's also, it's very important. And again, this isn't something that I have to hold space for men this way, but it's good to understand probably one of the most powerful driving factors behind how men make decisions. And there is this overarching fear of rejection.
Yeah.
So like when you were talking about the whole, am I fine? Am I okay? And whether or not someone will continue to pursue more information. A lot of times men will get into a spot of like, if they feel like they're in a quote unquote unwinnable position. And what I mean by winnable is like, I'm not going to get the answer out of you. Yeah. You're not going to tell me, and this is going to divulge into a fight. I'm going to just stop altogether.
Yeah.
Because we can tell something's not right, but we're not going to sit here and be placated into, again, a feeling of it's our fault. It's
Right.
probably one of the largest worries and concerns that most men have in relationships
Yeah.
is they're hoping and praying that whether it's their family's financial success, whether it's their health, whether it's just, their position in life at this moment, no man wants to be the source for why that's not going well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
And
we could be more empathetic to that position instead of having an unrealistic expectation that either partner would be able to, at 100% of the time, every single day, manage it all. I am
yes,
fully a provider in this, and I can be emotionally tuned, and I can this. Yes, maybe in your later life, 40s, 50s, 60s, when you have things settled in, but this is my theory on it. It's very unrealistic to assume our partners between, let's say, 20 to 38, even this is just pulling it out of my ass, 20 to 38, you are using the template of your parents' marriage, healthy or unhealthy, that
yeah,
they've known each other maybe 30 or 40 years. You can't expect someone that you've only known 5 to 10 years to know
yeah,
you the way that somebody who has been in relation with another person 30 to 40 years worth. That's not even a comparable data set. It's unrealistic, and you're holding them to an unrealistic expectation. Well, my dad, when I was this, did all these things. Your dad was maybe also 65 and retired and had the bandwidth to be able to do all of it.
yeah.
I am working 2 jobs trying to put food on the table. I'm trying to get the kids to school. I'm thinking long term.
Mm,
I have a 5 to 10-year plan for our family. So you're right. I'm sorry. And I could be better about day to day, slowing down and being
yeah,
more emotionally attuned to you. I'm not doing it because I hate you. And I'm not doing it because if I loved you more, I wouldn't do these things. I'm doing these things because I love
yeah.
you.
Whew. I mean, you're
I'm
speaking
really
fire
very
there.
passionate about this topic because so many couples fight about this, in my view, unnecessarily, because we are so defensively positioned that I want you to be more like me. It makes
I,
me feel known when you can just know that I want you to be emotional. But then what are all the other things that are going to go missing if you only come to my stance? I
well,
need
and
to
I
do.
almost feel like there's also a societal position that's come into whether it's dating or relationships or even marriages as a whole, whereas there's this belief that somehow our spouse is supposed to be our frenemy. Like it's not really about no, we're building a life together. There's these built-in mechanisms of like, oh, he's not going to be attentive. Oh, he's thick as a block of wood. Like
Mhm.
there's just and it leads us to then, oh well, all she's going to do is complain. And it's pretty sad because I come out of the blue collar world, so like I grew up listening to this, whether it was me
Yeah,
actually being a mechanic
yeah,
and literally hearing people like their least happiest moments of the day was going home to be with their spouse.
yeah.
That's sad.
That's really sad.
That's and you could see it from both sides
Yeah,
because you would
absolutely.
have moments where like you could even feel the other spouse triangulating you in the moment. And it's like, holy cow, this is a whole different dynamic.
Mhm.
But why did all of a sudden we turn into frenemies? When did that happen? Because we didn't date like that. No, we
No,
were infatuated with each other and
yeah.
we loved the hell out of each other. And so then at what point did we allow life to step into the middle and then drive us apart? And why did we use maybe more active silence than we really needed? Why didn't we articulate? I always talk about we all have like a role to play in whatever relationship or dynamic we're moving in. And so if I didn't articulate what my feelings were, what my needs were, what my emotions were telling me to my significant other, I can't then turn around and be like, well, you're so blind because I was obviously deaf. So when we're able to move into that spot, then all of a sudden the intimacy comes back. The problem that I have with this is a lot of times when we look at relationships, when they first come in, the first thing out of the block, and it's always you can tell who's going to weaponize it first, is like, well, we never have sex anymore. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, really? Well, tell me why would you? Like, can you just
Why
straight
at
up?
all would I be aroused if it is real or perceived? It's my job to do all of these things and to, in many ways, both partners are resentful of what they have to provide that they may or may not have been asked to provide.
Yeah.
And many partners are resentful of what they are not being recognized for or appreciated for providing that may or may not have been asked. So you have this kind of like competitive chess clock, if you will, when there's so much resentment
That's
built
so
in,
good.
that's going to rupture you wanting to be vulnerable and doing the most intimate thing you could ever do with another human being. And my needs and what the stage set that I need is more emotional closeness. You have followed through on your word. You are congruent and safe, and you do what you say you're going to do. Because if I'm literally laying down my life and you could kill me, I'm not going to feel safe to submit to you.
Yeah.
I don't feel that you're congruent. I need you to be steady and a person of your word. And if I am being kind of subversive or yelling or this or critical or overbearing or anything that may or may not remind you of a mother growing up, that's not sexy. So both of us as partners have a responsibility. It's not to say we ignore things to be sexy all the time. Like sex and attachment and attraction comes in waves, and it's not every single day because you have so many demands and responsibilities. That's why vacations are often a time where you're away from all the stressors, where couples can reconnect. You can microdose that feeling by having a sacred date night, by making sure that you're doing those things day to day, the foreplay beforehand. So when we actually have a couple spare hours, I can look at you and be like, you want to go upstairs? Rather than I look at the house and I'm like, the socks are here, the dishes are here, I got to do the laundry, this. I'm not in the mood, or what we're doing. I'm going to be thinking about what else I have to do.
Well, and so just to also break it down from what you just said, the big takeaways of everything you just said there is sex and physical intimacy is a byproduct of safety and security.
Yes.
If we don't have safety and security, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why we get so hell-bent on like, oh, well, this isn't happening. Well, it wouldn't. Why? Because we're still sitting here trying to battle each other. Like, good luck having sex in like medieval armor. Like, that's what we're trying to do.
That's exactly how it feels. And then
like, wow, this is really awkward. Like, it's
clink.
like this is just not good.
Swords, and it's just like, oh, I don't like this feeling.
No, this isn't intimate at all.
Yeah. You cannot have sex if you're wearing a suit of armor.
You can't. It's impossible. Like, and please don't send me a video of someone trying. But I'm just saying,
I don't want to know that.
like I'm good. The medieval ages are done.
Yeah.
Like, they're in the past where they should be. But anyways, getting back to this, it is going to say, well, if you're saying, well, he doesn't hold my hand, or she doesn't come up for hugs or kisses anymore, or anything like this. Again, you're asking for this physical vulnerability. That why are you providing that space to where that would exist? And if we aren't, then we have to look at things. The big blow, like, I'll never forget a couple I worked with that all of a sudden the husband really did get very attentive to like realizing, oh, wow, my wife is actually exhausted. She's got a lot going on. They had twins. She was changing her whole world from being very much a career professional to say, no, I want mommyhood is what I want to do moving forward. There's a big and hard turn in that, right? Where you go to like running companies to now I can barely run a household. And what he realized was it was little things. It was socks in the hamper. It was doing these little things that he could do. And in doing those, all of a sudden, intimacy in different ways came back. Now, the thing that we had a little bit of a regression, though, was there was resentment at a certain level, because it was like, well, you're only doing those things because you want to have sex with me. And he was like, no, I don't think that's not what I'm doing. Like, I realize that you don't have time to spend with me if I don't do this stuff.
Yes.
I'm trying to free up your schedule so we can like maybe, and I mean, we were fighting for like 30 minutes a night of like just being able to quality look at each other, like more than just a high five, and just like spend time. And there was this narrative of like, oh no, he's only doing that to get sex. And we really had to pull that voice out. And I said, is that voice from you? Is that voice? And it was like, it was very much a social narrative of like, oh no, this is transactional. I absolutely believe it.
Of course that happens. Yes.
Some people do that.
Do that for that reason.
But don't negatively add on this scope or this lens to your significant other saying, oh, that's why they're doing it.
And asking, go ahead.
No, it just, I feel like again, it's that like knee-jerk reaction. We have movement forward, we're getting the things we want, we're getting closeness and desires, and then our fear comes up, our vulnerability comes up, and then we jump to whatever's the next easiest narrative for us to accept.
Yes. And if we are worried, if there is a fear or the self-protection mechanism, as I like to call it, gets activated of this,
Yeah.
they are only doing it for that. Gosh, that would really hurt if that were true. You're
Yes.
not assuming it is, you're letting yourself feel, gosh, if what I'm fearing were true, this is how I would feel. Let me go in and check and verify and do the brave, vulnerable thing and share with my partner. I so appreciate you seeing what I need and fulfilling those needs for me. There's a part of me that worries, and it might not be rational, but I know I need to bring it up. There is a part of me that worries that you're doing it, or that this would be done for a partner who just had a kid, right? Make it societal.
Yeah.
In an effort to gain access to sex. Does that make sense? And not asking it in a way that you don't know that you just made sense, because you did. You're inviting your partner in to basically say, could you see how I would see that? I'm not accusing you of it, but could you see how a part of me may think that? I could see that. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because in one way, I do want space for us to be intimate, but I don't want you to think that I'm doing it solely, that it's a transaction, or I'm waiting with breath. I did this 5 times. Where's my blowjob?
Yes. It's not the star chart, right?
It's not like that. Yes, I actually am doing it to foster an environment in which intimacy can flow more freely. So yes, your fear in some ways is onto something. I would like that, but I'm not doing it manipulatively. So teaching partners to talk in that way and share what you are fearing, rather than accusing the person that the fear is already true. You're coming out the gate way too hot, and then the other person feels mischaracterized. And then, of course, if I'm mischaracterized, I will become defensive. I will shut down and I will try and prove to you why you're wrong, because it hurts to be mischaracterized, especially by your spouse, the person you love and want to spend the rest of your life with. That's the last person who you want to experience you or see you in a negative light. And then another fight ensues. Every time I bring it up, it gets defense. So we can dive more into that next episode for sure. And then I have a couple quotes that I want to start off next episode with too.
Well, I'm all locked and ready to go. I can't wait for that. I think there's enough to chew on with this one.
Takeaways that I want to share are: the mental load is a mutual responsibility of both partners. It's how you go about discussing it that will make all the difference. And you will also have to understand there are going to be things that are neither of your strengths that need to get done. In this discussion, you can also negotiate outsourcing it potentially, or creating a list and taking turns. Neither of you have to like it, but there's part of adult lives, just like if we have roommates or children or other people we're caring for, there are things that just need to get done, and you don't have to feel about it. It's just the business part of marriage.
And just the openness to have that discussion, I guarantee you, shuts down so much of what we experience as relational conflict
and resentment.
It's just saying,
I don't need to be resentful.
I just love having had these conversations with couples and watching people like swap chores. Like, wait a second, I love to vacuum. You do? Yeah, I'll do the vacuuming.
I love seeing the lines on the carpet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's my favorite.
When the men are like, no, I love mopping. And what? Yeah. I'll do the mopping if you'll do laundry. Yes, I'll do that. Okay, and all of a sudden, crisis averted.
Right.
And all it took was you just being able to say, this is what I actually think I'm good at and I like to do.
Words out loud. Yes.
Yeah. Silent resentment, talking to each other.
Yeah. Oh, I think I'll pick talking.
Well, as always, if any of you have any questions, if you guys have any responses, we want to hear them, because we want to be able to talk about them next time we sit down and continue to crack through this.
This is so exciting. And if you have, I do a Q&A on my Instagram. I don't know if you do it on yours ever. You can follow me at Talia Bombola, message us your questions. We can bring it and do a whole episode on it.
I'd love it.
Where can they find you, Adam?
They can find me at Wild Ethos Counseling on Instagram, and we can go from there. I will have to start those Q&As just to see if anyone will speak up.
Yes, I'm excited. And then we'll be posting this on social media. So if you like this, please share this episode with somebody who you think could benefit from it. Like this, review it, subscribe to us. We love hearing your feedback.
Absolutely. Send it to your spouse and say, you need to hear this.
I would love it if you listen to this. It would make me want to do things to you that are and they'll listen.
Well, that's one way to boost the fan base right there. We're getting 5 stars, baby. All right. Well, we will see you all later.
See you next time.